The Agnellis are the most powerful family behind Fiat, and in 2009, their company takes control of bankrupt Chrysler without paying cash upfront. An impossible-looking conquest whose hidden structure explains how one dynasty keeps Italy's industrial crown through fascism, war, strikes, scandal, and death. If stories about money, power, dynasties, and the empires behind them are worth preserving, subscribe to this channel and stay with the people uncovering them. Across the United States, Chrysler assembly lines stand silent. Tools hang untouched above empty stations. Outside the plants, thousands of workers wait to learn whether their jobs still exist. Inside a government conference room, bankruptcy documents cover the table. Chrysler needs far more than a loan. It needs someone capable of building cars, running factories, and keeping the entire machine alive. Fiat enters the room with no conventional cash bid. Instead, the Italian company offers technology and management. It brings smaller vehicle platforms, fuel-efficient engines, factory expertise, and executives who can rebuild the operation. In return, Fiat receives an initial share of Chrysler. More equity becomes available when specific government targets are met. Each target acts like another key. Produce certain vehicles, expand distribution, repay public support, unlock another piece of ownership. Fiat can then acquire the remaining shares. How does a company buy control without paying cash up front? It gives the people holding the wreckage something they need more than money. Chrysler needs an operator. The American and Canadian governments need factories working, loans repaid, and communities protected from another industrial collapse. Fiat holds the missing tool. It can supply the cars and leadership that make survival possible. That gives the Italian company bargaining power no pile of cash can match. The rescue agreement turns performance into ownership. Every fulfilled condition moves Fiat closer to the driver's seat. This is crisis turned into leverage. Fiat does not purchase a healthy prize at full price. It enters when the prize is broken, when every other party is running out of choices, and when useful knowledge carries the weight of capital. The apparent paradox disappears. Fiat pays with capability first, then uses the value it creates to secure control. A shuttered American carmaker becomes the bridge to a far larger global empire. But Fiat is only the visible machine. Behind it stands the Agnelli family, and behind the family stands an architecture designed to make limited ownership behave like absolute command. At the top sits a family-controlled company. Beneath it sit other companies, each holding shares in the next. At the bottom are factories, brands, investments, and industrial assets whose total value towers over the capital placed at the summit. This chain of holding companies works like a row of locked gates. Control the voting keys at the first gate, and influence passes downward through every gate beneath it. The Agnellis do not need to own every factory wall, assembly robot, or share directly. A concentrated voting stake at crucial points allows the family to appoint leaders, approve deals, and defend the group from outsiders. Their money sits at the narrow top. Their authority spreads across the broad base. The name on the factory is Fiat. The power above it belongs to a structure most people never see. That structure also protects time. Profits from one generation strengthen the holding company for the next. New assets enter the group without forcing the family to surrender the commanding position. When one business weakens, capital and influence elsewhere can support it. When a crisis exposes an opportunity, the structure can move as one. Ownership becomes more than wealth. It becomes an inheritance system built for war. I have spent years dissecting fortunes like the Agnellis, and the same machinery keeps appearing beneath different names. The Empire Code breaks it into 6 recurring patterns, including leverage, positioning, capital, and compounding advantage. It gives you a concise framework for seeing how money, opportunity, and power actually flow, so you can make sharper decisions about where your time, money, and effort go. The link is in the description. The Chrysler operation shows the system at full maturity, yet it leaves a harder question hanging above the boardroom. How does one family build something strong enough to survive an alliance with fascism, the destruction of war, strikes that paralyze factories, scandals that stain the name, and deaths that tear through the line of succession? Each shock should loosen its grip. Somehow, the industrial crown remains within reach. The answer does not begin in Detroit. It begins more than a century earlier, before the stacked companies, before the government rescue agreements, before Fiat becomes a national institution. To find the first link in that chain, the story moves to one former cavalry officer in Turin. It is the year 1899. The automobile is still a noisy, unreliable machine for the wealthy. Turin's streets belong to horses, carts, and tram lines. Yet inside a new company, a small group of investors sees an industry waiting to be born. They call it Fabbrica Italiana Automobili Torino. Among the founders stands Giovanni Agnelli. He brings military bearing, ambition, and one seat among several men who still share authority over the company. Fiat is young. Its ownership is unsettled. Its future belongs to whoever can turn a fragile workshop into an industrial weapon. In Turin in 1899, Giovanni Agnelli is still only one former cavalry officer among the founders of Fabbrica Italiana Automobili Torino. The unresolved question is how he removes that uncertainty and makes Fiat his empire. The answer begins around a table inside the young company. Giovanni Agnelli studies the men beside him, the machines on the floor, and the fragile market taking shape beyond Turin. In 1899, he is one founder among several. But the former cavalry officer has something the others lack. He sees the automobile as more than an expensive toy for wealthy Italians. He sees an industry waiting to be commanded. Giovanni moves with military patience. He learns the factory, builds influence among investors, and pushes Fiat toward a scale its cautious founders have not imagined. As disagreements grow, early partners lose their grip or leave. Their seats empty. Their voices disappear from the decisions that matter. Giovanni remains, gathering authority until the company's direction and his own ambition become inseparable. Fiat may have many shareholders, but it now has one dominant will. What does control buy before it produces wealth? The right to decide where every future advantage will accumulate. Giovanni can direct profits back into machinery. He can expand capacity before rivals are ready. He can make each new investment strengthen the position from which he orders the next. The family fortune is still young, but its deepest pattern is already visible. Control comes first. Wealth follows it. The first great mechanism is mass production. A factory machine is painfully expensive when it helps build only a few cars. Make thousands of standardized vehicles, however, and the cost of that machine is spread across every one of them. It is like dividing one heavy bill among an ever-growing crowd. Each car becomes cheaper to produce. Lower costs open a larger market. More sales finance better equipment, and better equipment produces still more cars. This loop gives Giovanni more than profit. Scale brings workers, suppliers, bank credit, and political attention into Fiat's orbit. A small workshop can be ignored. A factory feeding thousands of families cannot. Every added production line turns capital into influence, and influence protects the capital already committed. Fiat is becoming difficult to challenge because too much of Turin is beginning to depend upon its gates opening each morning. In 1923, that ambition becomes visible from the sky, a factory with a test track on its roof. Lingotto rises beside the railway lines of Turin as a vast concrete machine. Raw materials enter below. Workers and components move upward through the building. Finished cars reach the top, where drivers push them around banked curves high above the city. The rooftop test track is not decoration. It is the final station of a production system built to make motion continuous. Cars circle against the skyline, while smoke hangs over the streets beneath them. Lingotto turns Giovanni's theory into stone, steel, and speed. The factory itself becomes a statement. Fiat can gather labor at one end, impose order on thousands of parts, and release a finished machine from the other. Italy's industrial crown is no longer a promise held in company papers. It has a physical throne, and that throne stands over Turin. But passenger cars are only the beginning. Fiat builds trucks that carry goods and soldiers. It produces aircraft, rail equipment, and engines. The company reaches into roads, skies, workshops, and railway yards. One automaker becomes a web of industrial capacity. When Italy needs to move people, freight, weapons, or power, Fiat increasingly sits somewhere inside the answer. The company is no longer merely selling products to the nation. It is becoming part of the machinery that allows the nation to function. That position attracts Benito Mussolini. His industrial state wants large factories, disciplined workers, and companies capable of supplying national ambition. Fiat offers all three. The bargain is brutally simple. The state feeds the factory, and the factory serves the state. Fiat receives military orders and protection. Government demand keeps machinery turning and rewards expansion. Political proximity makes the empire larger, faster, and harder for ordinary competitors to touch. The price is paid on the factory floor. Independent political life narrows as Mussolini's regime crushes opposition and strips workers of freedom. The men beneath Lingotto's concrete ceilings still tighten bolts, lift steel, and follow the line. But their ability to organize outside the system is broken. The same authority that secures contracts for Fiat also disciplines the labor force producing them. For the Agnellis, state power removes uncertainty. For the workers, it removes choice. This is crisis turned into leverage in its darkest form. Mussolini needs industrial strength, and Giovanni controls one of the few Italian companies able to provide it at scale. Each order deepens Fiat's importance. Each expansion binds the company closer to the regime directing it. What looks like protection is also exposure, because factories built to serve national power inherit the enemies of that power. The industrial crown now carries a shadow. Fiat has engines, plants, political access, and a place near the center of the state. Yet every truck and aircraft links the Agnellis more tightly to a government moving toward war. The bargain with Benito Mussolini has given Fiat military orders, protection, and national power. Now World War II is about to turn the Lingotto rooftop and the factories beneath it into targets, and decide whether that bargain saves the Agnellis or buries them. And the bargain begins to bury them. World War II turns Fiat's greatest strength into a map of targets. Cars leave its lines, but so do trucks for soldiers. Its plants produce aircraft, rail equipment, and engines. A factory this broad cannot hide behind the idea that it merely serves ordinary life. Fiat is now part of the machinery of war. Every shed matters. Every rail connection matters. Every skilled worker matters. The company is strategically indispensable, which means the industrial crown Giovanni Agnelli spent decades building is suddenly visible from the air, Then comes the bombing. Explosions tear into Turin's industrial system. Roofs split open. Glass falls across production floors. Machines built for careful, repeated motion sit beneath dust and twisted steel. At Lingotto, the rooftop test track once proves that Fiat can pull raw material upward through a factory and send a finished car racing into daylight. Now the empty curves hang above a wounded city. The monument to mastery has become evidence of exposure. National importance attracts national danger. What happens when the factory that made a family indispensable also makes it impossible to escape judgment? The answer forms at the gates. Armed forces stand outside industrial walls while Fiat's workforce gathers beneath military supervision. Italy's political order fractures, but orders still arrive and engines are still demanded. Managers must keep plants alive while authority changes around them. Workers face pressure from the factory floor, the state, and the soldiers controlling access to both. Under occupation, Fiat is trapped inside the role it spent years making unavoidable. The company cannot simply step away from